What's up, everyone? Welcome in. This is Shay13Lord, and this is Eternal Evolution. And today I'm bringing you 10 things I wish I knew starting this game. So to get started, one of the best things about this game and the first things to learn is that what you level doesn't necessarily matter in the same way that it does in other games. So there's two reasons for this. One is the inherit system. So your top 5 units with the most levels, you put everything else in your inherit, and they will get whatever the lowest level is among those 5. So you aren't having to actively level more than 5 units. However, the bigger part to what I mean by this is, say early on, you're just trying to put levels into whatever you have. Maybe it's a good unit, maybe it's not. Maybe it won't last you for a while. That's totally fine, because there is a return system, and it's basically a 1-for-1. You aren't losing your resources. So if you go into your evolve, and then if you were to go to reset, you can reset any unit that you have levels in. It will give you back all of the resources that it took to get them there, except for the unit copies to rank them up. So the only thing you lose out on is your ranking parts. The reason this is important is, for instance, say here, with Omar, I put in resources, but I have a different unit who has a higher rank at this point, which means they'll be able to get that higher amount. So what I can do is actually reset my Omar. I'll get everything back except for, like I said, the units used to rank up Omar. Then I simply come over into my regular units. I need to take them out of inheritance. It's going to be this Emma. So we're going to remove her from inherit. We're going to put Omar in inherit, because we still use Omar, so we want him to have levels. But what is going to happen is we come back over here to Emma now, level up, and I can jump straight here. This puts all the resources that Omar had into Emma. She is now the level 157 with all of the stats built in like that. And immediately she fills out that number 5 spot for my units in the inheritance point. As you can tell, Omar picked up the inheritance, so he still has his rank, but he now picks up the level based off of this grouping. Great system, works well. Alright, the second thing is, if you are on a new server when you start, there's a few things you should wait out for. Mainly dealing with summons. There's a few pieces to this. Limited summons are a big one. So limited summons are the ones where you use 60 limited summons and you're guaranteed to get the SSS unit who is shown in that limit grouping. Now the thing with this is, when you use a limited summon, you get these limited chips. This is the reason you wait, because this thing right here, what you're able to do is, when you are evolving a unit, and this is key for the SSS unit specifically, because that's what this red one does, this will take the place of any specific one. So say I have a Crete, and I get to that point where I need another Crete, I can actually use these orbs to fill in that spot, which is huge. It's also one of, in my opinion, one of the highest value things that you can purchase in the game. But the reason you wait for the limited summon event instead of just summoning your limited chip or tokens all the time is because occasionally double chip events come around, which means for every one of these you spend, you get 2 limited chips back, which just makes your return rate far better. I did that. I used 120 of them on the Crete limited summon while the double chip was going on. That bumped me up to 240 of these chips, and I have now bought the orb out of that one, the orb out of this one, the orb out of the Crete one beforehand. That's why it's so important. Hang on to your limited summons, and especially don't use your limited summons for units you don't care or you aren't really using. Don't use it to just fill out your Pokedex of units. Unless you're super late game, it's far more beneficial to focus in on the few that you are building and using. Especially because units need so many copies of themselves to rank up. With this, the limited events are also limited to 1. So as soon as you hit that 60 and you get your guaranteed one, yeah, the triple S unit is still in that pool, but doing another 60 will not guarantee you another one. Alright, going back to the evolving system. So, evolving units, as feeding them into one another to increase their ranks, right? So the way that works is you have a unit, and this will switch every other. It goes requiring one of the same type, and then another copy of that unit. And it goes back and forth every time. So, in this case, you never want to use your same copy to level or to rank up when it could be anyone of that faction. Exception to this is for the food units. If they aren't the purples when you summon them, then it doesn't matter. You can feed them themselves, not a big deal. But for any units who are rarer units to get and more difficult to get actual copies of, just use the fodder for the empty spots, the ones that can be anything of their faction, and use the same one for when it requires a duplicate. So we'll go into the other summoning one as point number 4. I believe we're on 4. Alright, so number 4. Your basic summons, your friendship summons, and your shard summons, like these here, there is no reason to just pool them up and hang on to them like I am here. Just summon them all the time. When you get them, when you need them, feel free. Just summon the units, because that's your food. That's how you're going to rank up and increase your power across the board. Those ones, again, your shards, your basics, and your friendships, just summon them when you can. Now your advanced, however, that's a little different story. This goes 2 ways. Early game, just summon them. It's early game, you need units, you need duplicates of things to get ranks, things like that. Just summon them, use them, get more units to rank up things. Once you get a little further into the game and you have an actual team you can use, start saving them up. You don't necessarily need to save here like I am, where I'm at 400 of them, but work on saving them up, because there are summoning events that come around in rotation, and the more advanced summons and limited summons you do during that time, you just get extra resources and extra rewards. So there's no reason to use your advanced summons outside of that period, because you might as well get more free things by using them, and they come around decently often. Alright, so number 5, what to use these gems on. So these gems, you can get a fair bit of them, the diamonds, you can get a fair bit of them throughout just playing the game. And a lot of the time it comes to, well, what do I spend them on? So, my suggestion, in your shop, feel free to spend them on the resources. So, that would be things like the soul rebulites. If those show up, feel free, buy them. If these show up, the elite runes or the epic runes, use them on those. These are all limited things that you're going to need a lot of as you are leveling up your units. The things I suggest you generally stay away from using your diamonds for. I would suggest staying away from paying the 2700 to do 10 basic summons with your crystals. With your diamonds. If you are in a point where for some reason you just need a few more units, it's really critical, doing this once here or there is not terrible. But if I were to sit here and blow all 100,000 diamonds I have on summons, that would be really rough. My suggestion is you stay away from those. Also, I suggest until at minimum you have the red or white gear showing up, and not the starter white, like the legendary one, the one that's after red. If I jump in here, I can show you which ones I mean. This type of gear, this like blue color, so it's the step above red. If these aren't what you're buying, then you should not spend gems to buy these pieces of gear. In most cases, I wouldn't even ever spend the diamonds to buy these. Generally, because at the point where those show up in your shop, you can probably be farming that gear anyways. So I don't see a whole lot of point to ever spend diamonds on gear. Shards, this goes either way. I do it personally because the extra summons can be nice, and as a content creator, doing base summon sessions can be really good, so this is just an extra boost to make that happen. But this is kind of mid-range. It's not terrible, but they aren't great deals either. Again, there's no reason to not pick this one up, I just haven't. And this goes for the same. I shouldn't have gotten this commander out of here. It was just a point of I specifically needed one of these in the red rarity ranks. So this was a weird case, but I generally wouldn't spend diamonds on these. Any of this stuff, this is resources. You need these, you farm a limited amount of them each day. If you can pick up a little extra here, and you've got the diamonds, just do it. It's just extra resources for you. Now, if you want to buy gear, this is the place to do it. Use your guild shop, use your guild currency, buy gear. It's the only thing that shows up in there for the most part. Like, there's no reason not to. Alright, the next piece I have, number 6 for you, is when would I start using this? These stamina supplements. As you can see, I have 114 of them here, because my personal recommendation is until you get to, at minimum, stage 10. I'm not even using them until I get to about stage 12 or 13, but until it is more likely that you will get one of these, again, that like purplish white color gear, until it is more likely you get one of these than red gear, I wouldn't use this stamina supplement. Personally, I would hold onto this until you're getting this gear, the legendary equipment. As soon as you're getting the legendary equipment, just start using your stamina, because that's the stuff you're going to really start needing. You're going to be looking for specific pieces. Getting a lot of it is really helpful. I should go back to the thing about not feeling bad leveling up stuff. Don't feel bad leveling up your gear. It works the same way. If you level up low tier gear, you feed it into your high tier gear, it's a 1-for-1. You get those same resources added into the better gear. So you're just, it's just an early spot to start using some of those resources, get things moving. It's a great system, great plan. So don't be afraid of putting points into leveling up low tier gear, because you just will feed it into high tier gear later and you don't lose XP. And this kind of turns into a point of what gear do you focus on, what do you keep? So, my suggestion again, if it is anything less than red, avoid things like accuracy as a main stat or resistance as a main stat. Those two specifically are PvP stats. You're not really going to require them in PvE content, unless, especially until late game. Late game, there could be some cases where you start needing some of those stats for PvE. But for all of like the early stuff, up to at least stage 10 of all the dungeons, you don't need accuracy, you don't need resistance on your gear sets. I'm going to jump into the heroes here because I can show things a little better from this side. So, what stuff do you keep? Remember, these are always going to be flat. Your weapon is always going to be flat attack. Your chest piece is always flat defense. Your pants are always flat HP for their main stat. These will change, these don't. However, for the bottom three, your gloves, your helmet, and your boots, this is where you get other things. If you have a flat stat in here, I suggest not keeping it. Crit rate, crit damage, defense, HP percent, things like that. That's what you want to see down here. You don't want to see flat stats. I don't even know if I have any. Okay, here's a good example. EX attack. This is a piece of garbage gear. I will feed this into something else, I don't care. Because having the flats down on these bottom 3 are going to, in the long run, net you less. Another thing with that, until you get to at least the red gear, almost in a lot of cases legendary, but in red you'll start getting some exceptions where you need it. I wouldn't bother getting crit rate or crit damage pieces in this yellow gear or less, because the amount where it caps out is so much lower that you're going to still have such low crit rate, it doesn't really matter. If you put a bunch of stats into crit rate, crit damage, but your crit rate's only 20, maybe 30%, you're not critting very often. That's not giving you benefit. You'd get a lot more benefit by putting it into an attack percent piece when you're on the lower gear, because they cap at a lower amount. If you're just getting attack percent added in, that's going to do more damage than a 15% crit rate. Once you start getting to red and legendary gear, the crit rate cap gets so much higher, the crit damage cap gets higher, where those stats start being far more beneficial for you. The same thing kind of goes with what stats to use, whether you're using stats or sets. Early game, I focused a lot on making sure my sets paired up, because then I was getting these flat increase bonuses, because having 2 pieces of shield gear, of the guardian stuff, 15% defense, when I'm using the yellow gear, that's almost the same as what the piece would give me anyways. That gives you 18. If you're getting another 15 because of the set, you're making up a lot of extra here. Once you start getting into red and legendary gear, that starts to switch, where, in my opinion, the stat on that gear piece is actually more important than the set. You want to make sure you get those raw numbers, the stat amounts you need, and the sets become a bonus, where it's just a little bit extra that gets added on. Because if I look at this, and if my single boot gives me 32% defense, I'm getting far more value out of that than making this not a stat I necessarily need, just to get the 15% by having a set. That's my personal opinion of where that lies, but that's my suggestion to you on what gear to keep, what to kind of use, what to sell, and then that kind of includes piece number 9 of, do you focus on sets or stats? In my opinion, you focus on sets until you have everyone wearing at least this red gear, basically. As you can see, I still have like pieces of yellow just strewing where I didn't find a good red replacement yet, but those will get switched out instantly, so I'm focusing on the sets, or on the stats, not the sets at this point. Alright. Last piece. This is just kind of a small little extra one. One thing that took me far too long to realize is that when you do combats, when you do story missions, dungeons, this really applies in dungeons. The autoplay function, let me jump in here so I can show you. So the auto, it's not just a on or off. You can choose which units are on and which units are off. Taylor is an extremely good unit, but his ultimate just makes him jump backwards when it's on auto. When it's on manual, you can actually choose where he jumps, because if you look at it, it's not just a retreat ability as the AI uses it as. Instead, it is a displace, so he can move to anywhere in this circle. The reason this is important is it allows Taylor specifically to do a lot of things that other units can't, because you can't free move and position your units around how you need to. He is one of the few units you can move around the field, which lets him do some interesting things. I'll show off some of those in another video, but just be aware, in a lot of times, especially, again, Taylor is a great example of this, having him on manual can be a huge benefit for you, because It also means, so his, like I said, his ultimate makes him jump backwards. That is animation time to do that where he could be doing damage. If you don't have a reason to reposition him, then don't. Just let it sit there and let him keep doing more damage. You will actually see your damage numbers increase by turning Taylor onto manual. And there are other units who work the same way. Getting them on manual instead of just on auto can actually help your numbers a lot. One little extra one is just a small piece to note here. In any fight, when you jump into it, you have this right here. A lot of people overlook this little spot, but it's actually a really important thing. It gives you a stat sheet of all of your units. The reason this is important is this isn't a stat sheet of your unit's stats just by themselves. It actually is a breakdown of what you're getting bonuses from. So this might be my unit's ability, like actual stat numbers. However, when you're in a fight, you have a commander and you have prototypes. Well, here is the bonus that my commander is currently giving, and here is the bonus that my prototype is giving to this unit. And that goes down, and you can see every unit and the different buffs they are getting from different things. This is a really good thing to notice and to pay attention to because you can see some real numbers. Now again, when you're starting off, might not be the most important thing. But when you're starting to do stage 10 of dungeons and further, all those little damage numbers really matter because you start pushing the bounds of what you're supposed to be doing. So you can fight teams who have much more power than you simply by knowing where your stats are, how the synergy works. And even that trick with auto and manual, just switching some people to manual and maybe moving them around in the case of Taylor or controlling when they use their abilities in a fight can let you bypass a lot of content earlier than you would on fully automatic and just putting in the gear and letting them go. That's going to do it for today. Thank you guys so much. That is my top 10 things that I wish I knew starting out on Eternal Evolution, and I will be back with another video soon. Thanks.